I hope you're hungry because you're listening to Everybody Eats.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Everybody Eats podcast. It's your host, Bensky Belazaire. We got our co-host, Eden here, and we are joined with a really special guest, Miss Madelyn Flores. Thank you very much for joining us from the great state of Texas. Thank you very much.
Yes, representing all my Texans today.
Definitely. So, for those who are checking us out, make sure you're listening and tuning in on all platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and watch all the episodes on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribing to our YouTube channel. That's Everybody Eats. Make sure you're subscribing. We have all our videos on there, and make sure we're on Instagram a lot. If you're on Instagram heavy, that's where all our snippets go. So make sure you're following us at everybodyeats.pod on Instagram. All right. So from there, we'll get the episode started. Miss Madelyn, if you could introduce yourself, where are you from, what do you do? Oh, and real quick before I start, I like telling people pretty much how I meet the guests. So for those, I met Madelyn back probably around this time last year, almost about a year ago, at the 2019 ALPFA Convention in Nashville, Tennessee. So I speak a lot about NABA. Eden and I, Alan, we had our guest. He was one of our guests. We were involved in NABA a lot, National Association of Black Accountants. ALPFA is another business organization, national business organization, and we were blessed to be a part of it and be able to go with our school. So I met Madelyn last year. At that point, I was just networking with people, ran into you. We stayed connected. And I reached out. I was like, hey, let's get you on the podcast because I know you do some great work and I know you'll speak to our audience. So that's how we met. So if you could briefly speak about yourself, your background, what do you do, and we'll get it rolling.
Yeah, and of course. So, being from Texas, I've definitely stayed here my entire life. So grew up in San Antonio, moved up to Austin for school where I went to UT. Studied marketing and finance over there, and then graduated and joined Accenture up in Dallas. And so very much just Texas through and through, great state to plug in for them there. And, I think that, plugging into ALPFA, I think this is probably the better way of describing myself and how I got so involved in an inclusion and diversity kind of corporate way is when I went to high school, when I went to middle school, actually, I was the darkest person in that middle school, right? And I didn't really notice it, but that was my reality. And then when I went to high school, I ended up being the lightest person in pretty much my entire high school. And so when I went to college, that was the first time that I saw people that looked like me. And I think that having those experiences really shaped who I am, right? And helps me understand and what's important, what my pillars are. And so that's where ALPFA comes in, right? It stands for the Association of Latino Professionals for America, for anyone who doesn't know. And it was my way of feeling, like I belonged, because I was never on, any right way. I was just completely the outlier. But it also let me bring in all the different perspectives that I had, right? So in my middle school, it was a private school that my mom taught at, so we had a free tuition there. But all the parents were CEOs and executives, and so that's what I was used to. When I went to college, a lot of the parents were custodians and hourly workers. So having that different type of exposure helped me understand, and this is where it helps me with consulting and why I think I chose consulting, is having a better, empathetic view and understanding different perspectives and engaging and celebrating them, rather than having preference to one or another because of a certain set of experiences. And so all that to say, maybe it's a bit of a mouthful to give who I am, that's really, it's all kind of connected, and how I've ended up in my professional career of being in consulting, of being able to actively listen and engage with my clients no matter their background, but also why I'm so active in a professional development community to make sure that people that look like me are able to succeed, feel supported, and feels like there's representation, because we still have a long way to go. But something that ALPFA stands for, and I'm sure you guys do as well, is you lift as you climb, right? So if you make it past stage 3, you're turning around and seeing who's in stage 2 and bringing 3 of them with you, right? And then you continue that process. And I think that's something that ALPFA encompasses, and I know that NABA does as well, because we also had NABA at UT Austin. And it's those organizations and people that you surround yourself by, and generally that's what they're motivated by as well. And so as I'm in my teams, I always want to make sure everybody is, you know, supported and there's that structure there. But that's really kind of me in a nutshell, if that's helpful. But I want to make sure it's relevant to what we're going to talk about as far as, you know, my experiences helping me in the professional realm.
Definitely. I think it's a great explanation. And again, like a little later in the episode, we'll go a little bit more in depth in the involvement in ALPFA. But I think that produces a great framework of what ALPFA stands for, what NABA stands for. I speak about all the time, and like the importance of giving back and all those things that we'll speak about a little bit later. So in terms of consulting, right? I know for me, I wasn't an accounting student, right? Edom was an accounting student. We had Alan, but most of the people in NABA, they were accounting students. I was economics. So I was like, okay, one, I've never taken an accounting class actually. And from what I heard of accounting, I was like, I don't like it, right? So to me, I was like, all right, let me maybe get into consulting, right? To me, I thought it probably like fit my interests a little better. I hear like, oh, consulting, they make a lot of money, they travel a lot, they meet a bunch of different clients, right? So that's what I heard from consulting. I guess those are the stereotypes. So as a consultant yourself, how would you describe what is consulting, the different types of consulting, and like what if you could like explain that?
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to give my answer, but I'm also going to say that I feel like nobody can give the best answer for anybody to understand, because in reality, my parents still have no idea. They know I have a job. They don't understand how I can be working with different people all the time. And whenever I'm between projects, they always, you know, text or call, and they're just like, so were you fired? Do you still have a job? Like, what's going on there? So it's definitely an interesting industry. I think a really easy way, maybe it's too simplistic ways, you're solving problems essentially, right? And another way of looking at it as well is it's a unique situation, because you'll go into, let's use like a firm like Target, for example. Everybody there like has been ingrained in Target, understands CPG, they're subject matter experts, right? But yet they cannot solve a certain issue within. And so when you can bring an external point of view to the table, they'll ask different questions, right? So we ask different questions. We try and look at it from a different lens. Because we work with other CPGs, we can understand, well, what's the industry norm here? That helps then frame the right questions to get new insights. A lot of active listening has to happen there. And so again, this is where like my experiences help out. And so you really have to understand, they may be saying one thing, but then you have to deep dive and understand, well, what does that actually mean? What insights can we pull from that? And then after you get this data gathering is probably the first step, then you have to then sift through it all and understand, well, what does this mean? And how can we make impactful change for them, and something that they haven't already tried to introduce, and then set them up for success as far as how to implement it. And Accenture is unique in the sense that we not only do strategy consulting, which is more the big picture. So, you know, you want to market to this new demographic, let's help you put a strategy for that. So here are some big picture ideas of how to do that, but then that's it. Then you have management consulting that then helps, you know, that's the strategy for all of McDonald's, for example. But then you have different regions that have specific asks for the demographics in those regions. You work with that level, right? So I'm specifically in the South region. My customers are asking for X, Y, Z. Management consulting will then solve those problems and do a bit more hand-in-hand implementation with them. Then we're unique in the sense that we have strategy management, and then finally technology. A lot of our solutions and a lot of consulting solutions are around technology, right? Artificial intelligence, robotics, process automation, all that good stuff. Our implementation, our technology side then comes in to help not only create that roadmap or take the roadmap that strategy took, that brought to the table, but then figure out, okay, these are the necessary steps. This is the software that will help you, you know, free up your workforce to then focus on these key aspects or these key activities. And so the different kinds, strategy, management, technology, and technology can also have a wide range as far as switching from one platform to another. But again, it does go back to actively listening for what the actual problem is. Very similar to when we go to a doctor, we're like, oh, my head hurts, I WebMD'd it, I have kidney failure. Like, no, let's go back. Let's do some exams here and figure out, you know, what is the actual, you know, root cause, what is the issue there. And then once that's found through the data gathering, what can we do moving forward to help make sure that it doesn't happen again? And it's a sustainable solution so that you have a short term kind of like, this is what we're going to do, and then a long term to make sure that you're set up for success. So long answer, but again, it's difficult to give an easy one there, but happy to, go into any of that stuff.
Definitely. No, I think that's a good explanation. Kind of like you said, like, practical. If we have a podcast, right? You and I, we have a podcast, and we have an issue trying to reach, people out in California, right? I guess we would hire someone like you and I. We could talk about it all we want, right? But we might have like the same questions and same answers. So like hire somebody, a third opinion, who maybe like specializes in, helping other people or specializing in reaching people in that code. So it's like, hey, like, have a phone call. This is my issue, like, how can you help me? And I figure like you come, all right, this is the steps that you're taking. This is how we can, new things, new projects, new things that you can do to reach that. So I think at least I understood it. Edom, you good?
Sounds like you got it.
I got that.
I'm kind of, I get it, but not like, I guess probably not to the level Bensky gets it. This was his passion, so I'm kind of like.
Yeah. No, I guess like this is like I guess I was interested in this a little bit more, but I think for me at least I always found it somewhat interesting, mainly because I figured it just suited my personal strengths a little bit more. I wasn't really, like I said, I wasn't like that. I wasn't looking to be a CPA. I wasn't looking to be anything in that accounting. So I kind of I think that's why I felt it a little bit more.
Wait, so in consulting, there's different, like Nancy just said, there's different like specializations, you'd call them, in terms of what you specifically focus on, like management and I guess.
Yeah, and you're seeing it shift a bit right now, but generally, right, there could be the big picture problem. So, again, it's if you take, let's say, a bank like a Goldman Sachs, for example, saying like, we want to attract more, small business owners to come to us, right? Like, what is the strategy to do that? Like, what is this demographic? Like, how can we reach them? It's basically helping set up like framing how we get there. And then you have the management to then help on a lower level, as well as implement a little bit more. And then the technology side, maybe it isn't the third tier, but that's how I think about it with Accenture. That would be, like you guys are using Zoom right now. Is there another platform that might be better and more user-friendly? Can we create a program for you to make it easier to run? That's like where your technology comes in. And so maybe I'm thinking a little bit too much with like the Accenture lens of how we generally do work. But yeah, strategy, big picture, management, more of like implementing in small picture, and then technology is everywhere, essentially.
Okay.
We're now surrounded by technology, if that's helpful.
No, now I get it. So with that said, I guess since March, since all this happened, what would you say has been the maybe not moneymaker, but the big ask from Accenture in terms of your clients? I'm sure they had to shift what they were using you for. So what area?
Yeah, it's actually a very interesting question. Because you'll see a lot of the issues that we're solving for are going to be there whether your consumers are in person or online, right? Some of it's, for example, actually I'll give you a very specific example. Like if we look at a hotel chain, right? We were talking about probably a year ago how we could create a seamless experience where everything is customer centric. You walk in and they're like, oh, hello, Madelyn, like, welcome. We know your favorite color is purple and this is your favorite room, right? Like they just know all this information. So it just feels like a very personalized experience. Now the ask from a lot of these different like hotel chains and things where it's customer oriented is how do we make it a touchless, contactless experience? So it went from seamless and customer focused, customer centric to now contactless. So now how can we do everything on our phone? And so you see a big shift there. It's still solving, right, that customer experience. So like there still is that specific ask, but now how we're doing it, it's a bit different. So that's one way in which the ask has changed. I think the other one is the new working styles. How can we motivate our employees at home? How can we be more inclusive leaders? How can we, for example, on more of like a government sense, how do we solve for the Black and Brown community being more affected and more impacted by COVID? How can we solve for that in education and things in that nature? So there are definitely lots of asks right now about remote learning, remote working, and then just like the disproportionate amount of affected, like the effect on different populations. And then you're seeing with other clients that have more of a customer base, how do we make it more of a contactless experience while not losing, you know, our values as a firm and what they generally come to us for.
Okay.
Is that answering it? Or I don't know if you were hoping for something different, but it's
No. That's basically what I expected for the most part. Yeah.
You're like, I know this.
No, that's a great question, you know, because that gets me thinking, like when you said what are companies' new asks, like moving on in the future, COVID, and just in the terms of like you mentioned technology and AI, like companies are gonna have to literally change how they operate everything, right? Like, you know, more sanitary, social distance and all that stuff. So that kind of gets me thinking, like, yeah, and companies, what they're going to be asking for is different, and like the solutions and like I guess the technology aspect, I'm sure there's a lot of room for growth there, because everyone's going to want to implement new AI and new softwares and all that innovation going on in the future. So
yeah, I will say one expected benefit is something Accenture, again, this is Accenture specific, that we push are a lot of technology innovations, AI innovations. And what's been one nice benefit is now companies can't lag on making that decision or going forward down that path. You have to respond. You have to figure this out. It's pushed that needle forward. So that's been one, I guess, you know, interesting benefit for us is now there's that more like, oh, this needs to happen now. We can't keep telling Accenture, well, maybe in a few months we'll tackle that problem then. That's been really nice for us because we can see the benefits, and now they're seeing, all right, the timeline is now shortened and we need to get this done for our employees.
Definitely. So what would you say for either, you know, students or, you know, early careers or anyone who may want to get into consulting? Maybe if you give like 3 tips maybe, or skills that, you know, they should be working on, focusing on, trying to refine if that's like a space they want to get into.
Yeah, no, good question. I think one, you know, tangible way of understanding how to problem solve and set yourself up for success in consulting and recruiting is going to consulting, you know, firms' websites and looking at their success stories, client stories. You can see they'll literally draw it out for you. I don't know why I didn't do this as a student, but we'll put out for you, like, there was a CPG that had this issue, and this was our approach to solve it. This was our ultimate solution. And like, this is how we did it in the short term and long term. And that helps you be able to frame problems in the correct way of looking at it and processing that information. And then you also see how those companies generally try and approach it and solve against it, right? That's a really good one, and like indicator one of like how companies approach these things and which ones you would want to more than likely prioritize recruiting for. But then 2, it gets you thinking creatively, right? Okay, this is how you know, tried and proved methods have been done. This is how I should be looking at and framing problems. I think that'd be one big one, and what that'll give you is how to frame. I think that's one really important thing that we're looking for in students. The other, I think that's a really easy one as well, is there's so many resources out there just to get prepped on like case interviews and how to, like, there's certain methodologies. And now that I'm thinking about it, I don't remember many of them, but like Porter's 5 forces is one of them, right? So when you're given a certain, let's say like growth problem during a case interview or anything like that, like what we get with our clients, here's a way again to frame it. And so there are so many resources out there. If you just looked up like case interview prep, plenty out there. I don't remember any at the top of my head because thankfully I'm done with that process. And so I haven't had to look at that anytime recently. I think the third, and maybe this is different than what other people would say, but I think it would be reading. I prefer like social psychology books. And I think that's really interesting because then you understand how people view things. And that's something that's extremely important within consulting, is just understanding how your client and then how their customers view certain products, view certain experiences. And if you can understand that like psychological component as well as the social, it helps you be able to ask the right questions and relate to your client as well as the customers to provide the correct solution that's actually sustaining and that people will actually respond to. So reading, and like Dan Ariely is a great one for that. Malcolm Gladwell has like a really great podcast if you're not a big reader. Totally understand. It's like revisionist history. Adam Grant is another one, and they all have a lot of books out there too. And I think that's just a really great way of just kind of, I don't know, it's almost like understanding the people that you're trying to help solve problems for, and it gives you that psychological component that not everybody takes time to understand.
I got it. I think those are great points.
I think those liberal arts classes like sociology, psychology are really, I mean, I personally, I couldn't say this until last year, my senior year. They really do play a big role in life and everything. Just, you know, all the, like you said, the social psychology aspect of it, just the way people think and
oh, for
what makes
sure.
them, yeah.
I had like a call with somebody earlier today, and she was a psychology major, and I was like, I regret, like, I wish I could go back and do psychology, you know? I think it's like, that's been my best friend in like my journey in my career, these books, and understand, because you're interacting with people. No matter what you're doing, you're interacting with people. If you understand how a person thinks, works, you're going to be more successful. So I could not agree with you more. I wish I took more of those courses while I was in college, but the nice thing is you can find other ways of learning. And my biggest one have been these books as well as these podcasts. And so thankfully I can try and like still self-educate, but I do wish I did more in college.
Definitely. I think that's some gems out there for people anyway. Like we had one of our bros, he's from Houston actually, but he's into pretty much psychology. He has his own like psychotherapy business. But you know, back when we were in school, he's always, you know, big on psychology, on like, yo, if you know how someone thinks, like you could really work well with them, you know, how to like communicate and things with them. So I think that's just good gems for anybody who's interested in psychology, interested in, you know, getting involved in those books. And like Edom said, I do wish I took a little bit more of those like sociology classes and stuff in college. I never ended up really taking maybe one. I took one like ancient like ancient sociology, I don't know, some one like philosophy books, and one of those like philosophy classes I didn't really pay attention, but like I only took like one. But I definitely wish I took a little bit more. But hey, yeah, like you said, self-education, that's where it's at. So
right. Edom, do you do a lot of psychology within accounting, or have you seen that be beneficial?
No, I did nothing until my senior year. I took 4 or 5 psychology classes just during both semesters because I needed some credits, and I was like, I've taken everything, literally everything. And honestly, after going through it, I'm like, you know, this makes sense now. This makes sense now.
Oh,
Like
wow.
it's crazy how it ties in everywhere. You know, you play a video game, or, you know, a rapper says something, or someone says something on TV, or you finally get why your parents act this way, or why or why, you know, your significant other acts. It just makes everything just starts to click, and it, you know, it just makes sense. So I'm really upset at myself for like kind of like brushing off psychology as a major and as a study. You know, I really wish I went back and maybe not minored, but definitely took a lot of those courses just to take them. So
Sounds like you did a lot more than the average person, like 4 or 5. That's pretty impressive. Good.
Definitely. But yeah, so before we move to the next segment, any last points before we move to the next segment? Questions, comments?
I have nothing. I think if you're interested in consulting, just talk to people in it, and you'll get a better understanding. I know that it is very unknown, but the more you talk to people, you'll understand what you might like about it, and what might you not like about it, and that will help you understand if that's a career you want to go in.
Definitely.
That's my last point.
Listening to and like make sure you're paying attention. Dropping gems. So all right, on that note, let's move on to the quote of the day. So yes, for segment 2 for that quote, do you have that?
yeah.
All right, pop it up.
All right. So the quote is, "Closed mouths don't get fed. You got to speak with some bass."
I know who said this. This is a lyric, right?
Yeah, there's a lyric.
This is a lyric.
You already know it? Is that what you just said?
No, I've heard it before. I don't know who said it, but I've heard it before. Closed mouths don't. Say it one more time.
closed mouths don't get fed. You got to speak with some bass.
I've heard like a different, like the beginning part in a
Yeah,
different
closed mouths don't
way.
get fed. Yeah.
That's
The
hilarious.
second part is a nice little twist to it.
Yeah. Oh
That's not J.
man.
Cole, right?
Huh?
J. Cole? That's not J.
No,
Cole.
no,
That's
no,
not
no.
J. Cole. Dang, I've heard it before. Damn. I don't know. Is that Joey Badass?
No, closer, but
Oh.
I feel bad. Madelyn has no idea.
I have no idea.
Man. I don't know.
All right, so it comes from a song called Last Choir, and the person who said it in the song is Nick Caution.
Nick Caution. Okay,
Caution.
okay. So he's
Yeah.
from Brooklyn.
I think my like music background is mainly reggaeton, so I feel like I was still here.
Got you. But yeah, like you said, like closed mouths don't get fed. I guess that's more of the like more popular saying. Like my boy Sosa, he was on the podcast again. He's from Houston, right? So he's the one who used to always say that to me like freshman year, right? Whenever it was like, oh, I was scared to do something. He's like, hey, closed mouths don't get fed, right? Like you have to speak up. So
That was a good quote. I liked that one.
Thank you.
So yeah,
Wow.
yeah, you do have to speak up, right? Like so I've been learning that a little bit more, like post graduation, like working in the workplace, like sometimes not everyone's always going to be paying. Like in school, you're a little bit more nurtured environment. Even in college, even though you're still more on yourself, but it's still surrounded by like a lot of professors, teachers, right? It's a little bit more of a nurtured environment. I feel like once you start to like leave that environment, it's more on you to kind of like take initiative, kind of like ask for more education in certain things, like in at work, right? It's going to be more if you don't understand something. I've learned more recently. A lot of times you have to speak up, like, hey, can you teach me this? Instead of like school where it's more like, all right, they're
going to get to it eventually.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So at work, yeah, they're going to teach you some things, but I've noticed a lot more. It's like, the ones who like excel are the ones who verbally like, I want to go learn that. I want to go learn this. And it just that quote just applies to like a lot of different things. So
yeah, I feel like even on a smaller scale, you're in a group of friends. If you say the joke at a lower volume and then someone else says it at a higher volume, they're gonna get the laughs and the applause and all that. But you're just sitting there like, oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it applies in everywhere. Even like networking, if you stand there on the side, you could be the most qualified person in the room, but if you're just a wallflower, nobody's really gonna notice you. So.
It's a fact. Thinking of the ALPFA Convention, right, or a NABA Convention, an NABA conference, anything that we've been to, right, at those career fairs or just like speaking to professionals, right? The ones who usually get those opportunities are the ones who go out of their way to network and not just standing there and be like, oh, I'm shy, right? Like.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And on the flip side of that too, and this is just from somebody who's been doing lots of recruiting, the person who's almost outspoken or in a group, right, that isn't letting others speak, right? That's also not great. So you have to find that middle ground. But yeah, you don't find many. It's difficult for somebody in a professional position to see somebody on the side. And of course, like when I see that, I want to go and talk to them. It's not possible. Like, there are too many people coming up. And so yeah, I really agree with that. I really like that.
Yeah, gotta take initiative. So on that note, we'll go to our transition to our final segment where we'll speak more about involvement in Alpha, giving back in that community. So for a little background, again, we say this on a lot of episodes. Edom and I, we were involved in NABA throughout our undergraduate years. I'm very thankful for that organization. That's essentially where I'm at now. Learned a lot. Again, lifting as we climb, that's one of our big, mottos of once you make it, like you said, when you get a, phase 3, you're looking back at phase 2 and bringing people up, so that's the motto. I know Alpha, we were a little bit involved. I was more involved on my, senior year, but Alpha, I know it's pretty much the same concept, same thing. And I had a great time at the convention. So if you could speak a little bit more about how you got involved in Alpha and kind of, I guess, like what you do now, because you're very active as a professional as well. So if you could just speak about like your experience with Alpha.
Yeah. I think, how I found out about it, I think somebody kind of just saw how much I needed it, which is again what we appreciate about the people here, right? So I went to an event, and when I got to McCombs, the business school within UT, somebody said Goldman Sachs, and at first I thought, wow, that's super cool that a gold mining company is, you know, recruiting business people. I was like, that's so random, like so out of my league. And I remember going to a professional event, and I was talking to somebody, and I was, you know, I was outspoken, you know, I was very like vulnerable with these people. And I think somebody, it was a senior who overheard and kind of turned to me and was like, hey, let's talk over here. And that was my, you know, hey, Alpha would be good for you. You seem like professional, like this is new for you. This feels, you know, like a new thing. I was like, oh yeah, it definitely is. And so that was when, I mean, I can think of that person specifically, and then like 6 others my freshman year that then just took so much time to say like, hey, do you know what a resume is? Like, all right, you have yours from high school, but like that's 4 pages long. What are you doing? Let's talk about a real resume. Took so much time, right, to coach me. And I think of like 6 specific people, but it's probably around the like realm of like 20, right? Again, there's so like, you just want to help that community. And as soon as I saw that as a freshman, I reaped a lot of benefits that summer. I ended up going to like 6 different freshman like programs in 6 different states. And how could somebody who thought Goldman Sachs was a gold mining company get that done, right? And that's Alpha. As soon as that happened, right? And again, these are the people that we attract. I immediately come in my sophomore year, get an officer position, and vow that I'm going to have even more freshmen and take advantage of these programs. And then there's that continuous loop. And so I got into it because somebody did exactly like what you guys stand for and what I stand for, you know, turning around and seeing who you can help. And then I've stayed in it because that doesn't go away. As soon as you do it once, I feel like you get a little addicted to it, and you're like, how else can I help people? Like, how can I bring more people that look like me into my work environment or wherever I am? And so as a student, you know, worked on that with my underclassmen. And then as an upperclassman, made sure everybody was set for going into new industries that generally the Black and Latin community weren't represented in, right? And so pushing people and challenging them to challenge those norms. Then you go into professional. So now as I am a professional, it's changed what I feel like my expectations are to my community. I now do a lot of just coaching in the sense of this is what I expect from a professional, and give a lot of the like, you know, kind of spill in the tea as far as, hey, this is what we're looking for. Like I was just telling Bensky earlier, I was like, this is one of the key questions I ask to understand if you know what consulting is. And so helping guide them there. And so that, you know, effort and dedication will never go away because it won't stop until I feel like there is equal representation and there's enough people that look like me. If I'm being honest, it's not going to happen in my professional lifetime. However, you know, like this past year, I brought in the most Hispanics that we've ever seen at UT. And that took a lot of time to do, but that's where I can have impact, right? And I'm sure you guys feel the same way, right? Like you're still so involved in NABA, whether it's in a professional or student. So all this to say that like once you start helping people in your community, it's really difficult to stop. It just, what changes is how you do it, what that effort might look like. And once you're in these, if you're in them, like you feel this, like I feel like everyone be like probably relates to this and can think of a certain student, right, that they've just recently talked to, or who their mentor was, who brought them into the professional world, who introduced accounting, right, or like understanding of what those are. And so I think it's very similar. I'm sure it's similar to how you guys feel about NABA as well. And so that's been my journey, and that's why I always, you know, stay involved.
Yeah, definitely. That makes me think a few weeks back we had on our boy Nigel Barker. Essentially, he was the one who he chartered the NABA chapter at Queens College. That's how, you know, I got involved, and I pretty much told Edom that's how Edom got involved. And then you know, even referring back to the, you know, ALPFA Convention, like not to brag, but I love to say the story. Like Alan and I, we pretty much like organized getting like people from QC to the convention, and that was the first time, at least we're saying first time ever, but at least first time in recent history that we got like 9 people from QC to be able to go to the convention. And like I love telling it because I remember on the plane, like as we're landing in Nashville, I believe at least like 8 out of the 9 people who were there like already had interviews lined up before we even like landed, you know, and I'm like, at that point, like, I thank God I didn't even need, you know, the internship or the interview or anything like that, right? So we were just going to make sure to like help everyone else, you know, and pretty much like by the time we finished the ALPFA convention, like most of the people we had already had like offers, you know what I'm saying, like for jobs or internships and things like that. And like you said, that feeling is just like, it's amazing being able to, like, everybody eats, right? That's what we call the podcast. If I eat, we all eat. So that's why that's one thing that, you know, if you're not involved, you don't really get it. But when you are involved, you do understand, like, it's a really great feeling of, like you said, helping people who look like you get into those similar positions and stuff. So
And the achievements as the years go on, you know, I'll never forget, I went to my first NABA convention my sophomore year, and I had no idea what NABA was about. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know anything about anything. And one woman goes up and she notices I'm from Queens College, and she says, you know, you guys don't have any members. You guys don't bring anybody. You know, I've never, like, she was just like, you know, scolding us for, you know, I guess not having enough membership. And then I just remember the following year we had 10, 14 people come with us.
to the convention, yeah.
To the conference. Yeah, it was just, you know, so having the number go from, what was it, four, and having that like almost like 4 times that amount the next year is just, it feels really, really good. It's small stuff, but it's like, you know, it's with your own 2 hands, you help do that, you know. So
you can see you get to reap the benefits, you know.
Yep.
As you see it. And one other reason why I think ALPFA, like, convention, and it sounds like NABA conference also is so great for our community, right, is the fact that, and this is why I tell everybody, I was like, you have to go to these conferences. There's this understanding, right, of somebody that looks like you're in the Black and brown community, where then you don't need to have that almost level setting conversation. You can just go straight into it. I wish it didn't exist, but it definitely does. At, you know, the convention, I have such more like real conversations with these students who feel like they can be vulnerable and ask the questions that they hesitate asking other recruiters or other people in the industry, because it might be seen as a weakness. Or, you know, when you ask it, they may like be taken aback, like, are you taking this seriously? And that's one thing that I love about like ALPFA, NABA, NESB, like all the different conferences that we have, is that everyone you're interacting either looks like you or has taken the time to understand the community, right? And understanding where the obstacles are and where the frustrations are, and be able to speak to it and relate to you. And so you're just having, like, I have the best conversations with students at these conventions. And as a student, I had the best conversations with professionals, because for some reason you already get each other in a degree. And it's just this like electrifying feeling. Like, I swear, every year once convention comes around, it like motivates me for the next like 6 to 8 months to like keep going. And I've been trying to go to NABA. I've been trying to go and represent Accenture over there. And so one day I'll get over to that conference, but I hear such good things. And I feel like ALPFA is pretty great, but I've heard that NABA might be a bit more fun. So I'm curious to see what that's like.
We've heard that about ALPFA too. So I mean, like we've been to NABA conferences, like the regional ones. I haven't been to the national one yet. But
oh, no kidding. Okay.
the national one goes crazy, and then for ALPFA we went to the national one for ALPFA last year. So this year obviously everything got canceled because of COVID, but next year hopefully like at least one of them, I have to go to at least one of them.
Not especially after everything getting canceled, bro. You gotta go to one at least.
Yeah. and like you said, like to me it's just it's everyone's relatable like at these conventions. You know? And to me that's what it is. It's like sometimes in these professional environments in the office or whatever, what have you, you kind of put on like a face a little bit. You have to like, you know, kind of like, you know, put on your suit and tie and be like, hi, you know. But like at these conferences, you just feel more relaxed, more like, hey, bro, like, you know how it is, blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's just, like you said, like that barrier of like professional, like we're still professional, but that barrier of like putting on a face, to me, at least is removed. And we could just get right to the point, like you said. I could be myself, right? I can talk to you. I know for the most part, like how you feel. I understand how things affect you. You understand how things affect me. And we could just have like a real conversation, right? So that's one reason why I really love it.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you can also ask the pointed questions that I think a lot of people from our community have in mind. Like, for one of the main reasons I chose Accenture, honestly, was because when they had information sessions, they had people that looked like me. They're also one of the only consulting firms, and this is, I haven't checked it in a few years since I recruited. We were the only consulting firm that actually published, our demographics numbers, what our gender disparity was, how many Latinos were there, how many of the Black community was represented as well. And that to me spoke volumes, because the only way you can fix a problem is by recognizing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was president of ALPFA that year too, and I got on all the consulting firms, and I remember one of them telling me, like, well, we try and represent, the city or state that we're in. That's the population. I was like, oh, interesting. So is Texas, is your office, are all those offices almost 50% Hispanic? Because I've never seen a Latino from your, firm come to our campus that is a very large, Hispanic community. And they couldn't answer it. And so that to me was very revealing, as far as, I want to be at a firm, and maybe I should have challenged myself differently in college, but I wanted to be at a firm where I saw people that looked like me. And so these conferences were great because that was a very specific question I had, and I wanted to ask it from a person of color that would give it to me straight and not say, oh, we have all these initiatives, we don't see color. Like, I did not want to hear any of those answers.
I see color. So I see it though.
How do you think I put this fit together?
Definitely. Yeah, 100%. I definitely get what you're saying. For real. Like, for anyone listening out there, if you're an undergrad, definitely get involved in those business organizations. NABA, ALPFA, Ascend, those are the big three. I'm sure there are others out there, but those are the big three that I advocate. NABA first, I'm biased. But I'm biased. But for sure, like, get involved in those business organizations. They only have your best interest in mind. And again, like, everything I've learned about the business field, professionalism, resume writing, public speaking, like, all that stems from interactions at NABA, people involved in NABA, and ALPFA, of course. So definitely, if you're in college, get plugged in. And even as a professional, it's not too late. If you work for like a big corporation, a lot of times they'll have like diversity groups, or like they'll do recruiting at these like conventions and stuff. So there's always ways to get plugged in. So before we wrap up, I wanted to speak about your travels. I know you love to travel, and I saw back in 2019, pre-COVID, right? BC, before COVID, like, you had right, you had some extensive travel. So if you could just briefly, what was that like? Where did you go? How long were you there for? And like all that.
Yeah, so I love work. I love consulting, love Accenture. It is not my identity. And so traveling is a big proponent of who I am, right? As far as like giving back to my community, as well as traveling to understand different cultures. And so I make time every year to go take a big trip. So last year I went to the Middle East for about a month. And then this year I somehow had all this PTO saved up. And so I went to New Zealand and Australia for about 2 months. And so really interesting experience. I rented my own little camper van that only fit me, myself, and I for New Zealand for 3 weeks, and just kind of rode around and hiked, and met a lot of really great Kiwis that were super, super nice. And so that was a really great experience, just to have some self-reflection, like hiking on your own. I don't know if you've ever done it before. That was my first time of doing like solo hiking. And these were like 8-hour treks or 9-hour treks. Were great for that, like, self-reflection. I also like listen to podcasts and books, but I got to put in mind, like, what do I want to get out of life? Like all those types of questions. And then I spent time in Australia too. And again, it's just nice to understand like what's happening in the other world firsthand, as far as like culturally, how do people operate? Like seeing the work-life balance over there, it is a true work-life balance. I don't think America is anywhere close to that. But it was so cool to see. Like one of the best things I learned about Australian culture and corporate America is like on Fridays at like 3 p.m., latest 4 p.m., every office is having a happy hour. Like my friend worked, one of the friends I was visiting out there works for one of the best investment banking companies out there, right? And you know how banking firms are. I mean, it's like 90 or 100-hour weeks, kind of like that stuff. She and I were like to meet up for dinner at like 6 p.m. on a Friday, and she got to the restaurant a little late, and she's like, sorry, me and my 8 other team members just finished 2 bottles of gin, it's Friday. And I was like, And so it's definitely, you know, it's nice to see that, but no, I love traveling, and something to, again, relate it back to everything is you're you know, you will make the reason an excuse to not make time for yourself, right? Like, I think you need to understand, is it a priority for me to climb the ladder quicker? If so, then yeah, maybe you don't take as many vacations. However, if it's, no, I'd like to have a steady career and I'd like to be, you know, a top performer, but I don't want to sacrifice, you know, what my pillars are, like what my morals are, then you will find time. And that's what I've been able to do. And so I have not slowed down in my career at all. I was promoted early. I've done well. Like, I don't think anyone has any, you know, bad remarks to say on my performance. And I've been able to do it while still finding time for myself. And so that's one thing I always try and tell people too is, a lot of people think that you have to work these like 70, 80-hour weeks to be successful. And I truly don't think that's accurate. And generally you can relate to more of these higher up people who travel quite a bit if you've done something similar, if you have a passion that you make time for, because then you can relate on more of a human sense and not necessarily a work place. But yes, bop around all over, really enjoy traveling, try and make time for it all the time. And if you don't travel, you know, definitely try to. And there are ways to make it cheap. Like, I traveled after I graduated with like no money to my name, and I went to South America where it was $3 for this like stunning dinner. Like, very, very manageable to make it work. Just don't think of Europe. You know, I think everybody thinks Europe, but it's expensive. So, you know, broaden your horizons and see other ones.
Definitely. I think that's some great points. Like, traveling, it's I love to travel. It's more of, like you said, it's that cultural IQ, right? Just understanding, like, you know, the way you do things is not the only way to do it. It's not necessarily the right way to do it, right? Like, there's 7 billion people out there. They do, you know, your task, you know, 110 different ways, right? So, you know, it's learning, you know, about other cultures, how they do things, how they interact. Like you said, like, just because you learn it growing up doesn't necessarily mean it's right or perfect or all that. You know, there are other ways. And I just, you know, me personally, I love culture, right? That's why not only we have the podcast, but we have Kilty, right? Our clothing line, and that's what Kilty literally translates to, culture, right? A little bit of culture, right? So that's what we're about. So on that note, actually, we're actually doing a little challenge for our Kilty line, and since you're on the podcast, you're automatically a part of the challenge.
All right.
So essentially, it's only just 3 questions. First question is just your name and your cultural background. The second question is, what is your favorite part of your culture, and why? And the third question is, if you could travel anywhere, no money, you know, money's not an issue, where would you go and who would you bring? So those are 3 questions. If you could answer your name, cultural background, favorite part of it, and why, and where would you travel if you go anywhere, and who would you bring?
All right. I'm answering this like on here.
Right now.
Like right now? Okay, cool. That's fine. So Madelyn Flores here. That's my name. My mom is actually Puerto Rican and Polish, and so I have that in me. And then my dad is Bolivian. And so big mix. I think the one thing I love about all of them is the food. So there's like pierogies from Poland, which are incredible. And y'all have a lot of them in the Northeast. We have like that in Texas. That's fine. But then there are also like salteñas from Bolivia. And so I think it's actually just pockets of goodness is probably the like common denominator in all those cultures. And then the last question is, where would I go travel if money wasn't? I would travel to Melbourne, Australia, and I wouldn't need to take anyone. My boyfriend's there, so I would go see him and not be so far. That'd be where I go.
Got it. Hey, thank you for doing the challenge. That's all it is. Rep your Kilty. So.
Great.
So on that note, that's all we have for today. Any last questions, comments?
No, this is great. I'm really excited to see you guys do this. Again, it's such a great platform to get more people involved and share with them kind of secrets and wisdom that we have, especially in corporate America. So please keep going. And if y'all want anybody, as far as recommendations to be on here, I am happy to share my network.
Definitely. So we can do that right after. So definitely.
He's like, I'll take you up on it right now.
So on that note, thank you everybody for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode and learned a lot. Tune in every Tuesday. New episodes dropping every Tuesday. Apple Podcast, Spotify, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're growing it, so all the episodes are on there as well. You can watch all the episodes on YouTube. Tuesdays we drop. See you guys next week.